off, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Rachel Hoagland, and I am the president of the Boston chapter of the American Marketing Association. And I just want to give a special thank you to a few folks in the room. They've done a fantastic job of pulling this event together. You know, a lot of hard work goes into organizing and coordinating, or running cats, as we like to say, with events. And tonight we have such a fabulous turnout. I just want to quickly thank Alex and Leah from Stone Temple Consulting in reaching out to AMA and working with Bonnie on our sponsorship team to put this great event together. They did a phenomenal job behind the scenes, and just want to give them a quick round of applause and say thank you for that. I also just want to quickly thank our AMA team. We've got Paul here, some of our volunteers, and Kerry on the social media team who's going to live tweet and blog for us. And just want to thank them as well. They did a phenomenal job promoting this great event through all of our communication and media channels, so thank you. We are really excited. This is AMA Boston's first time partnering with Stone Temple Consulting. And we are really excited not only for this opportunity, but for the potential for future opportunities going forward. So let me just quickly introduce Stone Temple and tell you a little bit about who they are. Stone Temple Consulting is a leading digital marketing agency that's been servicing enterprise organizations since 2002. Originally founded as a small consultancy in 1997 by Enge, Stone Temple has since expanded into an acclaimed full-service digital marketing agency, providing a broad range of white-hat SEO, digital content marketing, and viral social media marketing services. While the company has greatly expanded over the past 18 years, the core values remain the same. Stone Temple maintains a holistic approach towards marketing consultancy, directing a continuous path of innovation within the industry. So during tonight's event, we want you to feel free to share your thoughts on Twitter using hashtag Art of SEO.
Art of SEO, yes.
No,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the book, actually.
Yeah.
Art of SEO. But hashtag Art of SEO. And follow Eric at Stone Temple and Mark at Mark Traphagen. So now let me just do a quick introduction and tell you a little bit more about our keynote speaker, Eric Enge. Eric is the CEO and founder of Stone Temple Consulting. A prominent SEO and digital marketing industry thought leader, Eric has been an entrepreneur for almost his 30-plus year career. He is the lead author of the book, The Art of SEO, is a columnist and contributor to publications such as Search Engine Land, Moz, Copyblogger, Marketing Land, and Social Media Today. He is a regular speaker at industry conferences such as Search Marketing Expo, PubCon, Search Engine Strategies, and many others. Eric is also well known for his publication of groundbreaking research studies on what works and doesn't work in digital marketing, along with informative interviews of other industry notables, including prominent members of Google and Bing. So without further ado, please welcome Eric Enge.
All right. All right, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Everybody hear me okay? Excellent. So yes, I'm going to talk about the future of SEO and digital marketing, at least my thoughts on it. But first I'm going to share one other fun fact. I am the 1984 world champion of in foosball of an event called Goalie War. I always had fun sharing this because I get to say two things about it. The first is, well, I do it with a little trepidation because it seriously dates me. That is 31 years ago. However, this is a little weak. Oh, okay. And the other is, if you want to win a bar bet tonight, I'm your guy. Let's go. Okay? So anyway, I'm going to just spend a couple minutes and tell you what's new in the book itself, because we are giving everybody a book tonight. And so a few different major changes that I'm going to highlight. We had a chapter in the second edition about link building, because that's what we used to talk about in SEO. And by the way, there's still a place for a little bit of link building depending on how you go about it. But that chapter is now called Content Marketing. That's reflective of how things have evolved along the way here. Chapter 8 on social media was completely rewritten because our thoughts on how you use social media to build your SEO strategy have changed dramatically in the past 3 years. Chapter 9, we actually never had a chapter about Panda and Penguin and penalties, and we now do because that's such a big part of the Google landscape today. And then our tools chapter became a little out of date. You probably don't use these tools anymore. And so we modernized that and we updated everything in there. And of course, our SEO predictions 3 years ago, some of those happened. We have a lot more information. That was completely rewritten. There's a lot of other change throughout the book, tell you the truth, but these are chapters which are effectively brand new with this edition. So I'm going to break this talk into 2 parts. First part is I want to talk about what was big in 2015, the year that we're almost done with. And then I'm going to talk about basically a more future-looking view in this presentation. So 4 major areas of change this year I'm going to highlight. Mobilegeddon. Everybody who doesn't know what Mobilegeddon is? Somebody hold up their hand. Okay. It was a big update by Google which made mobile friendliness of your website a ranking factor. So I'm going to talk about that. Another big thing that Google did this year is that they started getting data from Twitter directly on all the tweets that people do. Historically, it was very difficult for Google to get that information, but now they get that via API. And I'm going to talk about the impact of that. I'm going to talk about content marketing and a concept of content shock. The idea that there's so much content being published today that it's just not manageable to deal with. And then Google's rich answers in search, and I'm going to do some demos of what those are along the way. But with that in mind, just a couple of slides about Mobilegeddon. So earlier this year, Google announced that they were making friendliness of your website to this kind of device, a smartphone device, a ranking factor. And everybody wondered how much of a ranking factor that was going to be. So we set out to measure it. We actually collected data on 15,235 Google search results and kept data on the top 10 listings in those search results in a database. We did that on April 17th, which is before Google did this update. And then we looked at the same 15,235 queries again on May 18th, so just about a month later after Google did this update. And we did that because we wanted to see how big an impact this update had. And it was pretty interesting because most of the industry media that writes about this stuff told us that Mobilegeddon was a non-event and that it was a very small ranking change by Google and it wasn't that important. But actually our data told a very different story. So what I'm showing you here is that for pages that were not designated as mobile friendly by Google, nearly half of them lost ranking position. That sounds like it's pretty important, right? And about 20% had some gain. And in contrast, the mobile-friendly pages, there were more of them, but more of them gained rankings than lost. So when I look at that, one of the lessons from the Mobilegeddon update is if you don't have a mobile version of your website, you need to fix that. It's really important. Increasing number of sites have more than half their traffic from people on smartphones these days. So that's the first point. All right, on Twitter indexing, as I mentioned, Google now gets information from Twitter by an API. In other words, every time someone does a tweet, Twitter notifies Google that it's happened and they get that information in real time. Oops, I went too far. Excuse me. All right. We gotta jump back. Okay, so back in February of this year, what we did is we ran a study of 138,000 tweets. And the reason we did that is we wanted to see how many of them Google put in their index, how many would show up for search results. So that was the purpose of the study. And when we did that, we found basically that the February results, about 7.4% of all tweets were indexed. Now, most of you in the audience probably thought that number was, well, doesn't Google index them all? And the reality is that they don't, because Google doesn't index things that they don't find valuable, right? So, but about 7.4% were indexed. But one of the reasons why they may not have been indexing that many tweets is because previously they had to crawl Twitter constantly to find new tweets. But with this API access, they no longer have to do that. So the theory was that the indexation would go way up. So one of the measurements we took is we looked at within the first 7 days, how many tweets got indexed. Turned out that back in the February study, only 0.6% were indexed within the first 7 days. Now I know I mentioned 3.4% a moment ago. 3.4% was how many were indexed over like months. So over time, Google indexes more and more. But what we did is we compared February indexation of Twitter. First 7 days had less than 1% indexed. And in the June study that we published, because we redid the study, it jumped to 3.4%. That's a 466% increase. It sounds like a big deal. But if you're thinking that tweeting something is going to cause Google to discover your content really quickly, 3.4% is a really small number, right? So using Twitter as a way for people to discover your content might not be such a great idea. And it does appear that Twitter is probably not that valuable a place for your content to appear from an SEO perspective, from a Google perspective. Tons of other reasons why you want to be on Twitter. The other thing that was interesting, oh, hang on, oh, there we go. We also did another slice where we compared the authority of the people doing a tweet, and we found that people that were more authoritative got indexed more often. So for people with very high authority, like more than 100,000 Twitter followers, back in February, they had almost 20% of their tweets indexed. So the authority of the person doing a tweet is a big deal. And in June, that even became a bigger discrepancy. And you could get 35% of your tweets indexed if you happen to have more than 100,000 Twitter followers. That's not everybody, unfortunately. So, okay, so next thing, I want to talk about content marketing, because that is one of the big things that people have really focused on in 2015. And people really care a lot about content marketing, a way of building their brand. And it's a very smart way to build your brand. But this concern has emerged about a thing called content shock, because so many people are publishing content and pushing it out there now that it's too much. It's too much for people to consume. And is this a big problem? And is it preventing us from, like our content will never be seen by anybody? And that's a big concern that people have. And it's actually supported by some data. And I'm going to show you data from a couple of different studies. This one is from Chartbeat. And what it shows on this axis here is the amount of social sharing per post, y-axis. On the x-axis, the amount of read time per post. And so in this quadrant is stuff where there isn't much sharing and not much read time. This quadrant is things that got tons of shares, but still not much read time. Over here, high read time, not many shares. Look at the quadrant of lots of shares and lots of read time. It's empty. Okay, so getting lots of social shares is not your ticket to getting people to understand or get your message, to get your message out to them necessarily, right? And doesn't necessarily carry SEO value. But I have one more study I want to show you. This one was done that was done by Moz and Buzzumo. And Buzzumo is one of those sites that collects all kinds of data on articles and their publication, how many shares they get and links they get and things like that. They did a study of 100,000 random posts. 75% of them had 0 external links. So that supports the theory that most of the content that gets published is crap, right? And then 39 or fewer shares were for that same 75%. So that's one viewpoint. But I want to show you another factor, oh boy, this is a horrible time to want to sneeze. But in any case, one of the things their study found is that there was no correlation between, or very low correlation, I should say, between shares and links. So I already showed you one study that says there's no correlation between shares and read time. Turns out that there's very little correlation between shares and links. So this is using a thing called Pearson correlation coefficients. I won't bore you with all the math about that, but the one thing I want you to notice that I've highlighted here is that anytime you see something that has a correlation coefficient of 0.3 or higher, that's actually pretty good. It means there's a strong correlation, and the higher that number, the closer it gets to 1, the more impactful it is. Well, here the correlation between shares and external links is 0.01. It's almost nothing, right? And so that's that tells you that there's really a very, very weak correlation. So we're going to dig into the data a little bit more, but first of all, none of the social networks do well. It's not like Facebook is wonderful. It's 0.02. Okay, it's double the average, but it still sucks. And then, all these other things have, various problems. So, here's what it comes down to. Most content gets shares. Well, actually, most content gets nothing. But of stuff that gets something, most content gets shares or links. So, the question is now, what can you do about trying to get an overlap where you create content that gets shares and links, and where social sharing can be part of your content marketing strategy? So, okay, so yeah, this is just more data on that. So here are some sites that actually have a pretty good correlation. Remember, I told you the number to be concerned about was 0.3. So New York Times here is almost at 0.5, right? And all these sites are more than 0.4. So these particular sites are actually getting a higher than 0.3 correlation. So when they get content that gets shared a lot, they also tend to get a lot of links, all right? And the characteristic, the study went much deeper than I'm going to share here today, but what they learned is this notion of opinion-forming journalism works, okay? And I'm not talking about opinion-forming tweets. I'm talking about opinion-forming real articles that go in depth on things. And so that was one of the things that this study found. Another slice at it. These sites also had a very strong correlation, also 0.4 or higher in each case. And what they specialize in, which by the way is what we do a lot of on our site, data-driven research studies. Data-driven research studies also tend to get lots of social shares and lots of links together, which is really cool to know. One more thing that they found that was important, which is the content length of the article. So here's just raw data on the content they studied. The overwhelming majority of the posts were 1,000 words or less. And then there was a small amount that were 3,000 or less, just to give you some idea of the landscape of what was in the study. But here's the social sharing and links data. What they found is that longer form content was much more likely to get both a good amount of social shares and a large amount of links. So that was particularly interesting as well. So just for fun, here's our study. We do data-driven research studies at Stone Temple all the time. We publish roughly once a month, and they do extremely well for us. I'm highlighting this one, which is the study that I showed you some data on before about Mobilegeddon. 3,100 social shares, which isn't bad, but here's the link data. So 2,800 links from 200 different domains, and one of those domains was the Wall Street Journal that did a feature article on it. So really well thought out data-driven studies are a great way to go, and they certainly work for us. I got to work on the opinion-forming journalism part. Start spouting opinions randomly here, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But so the lesson is, even though these studies say that social sharing isn't correlated with reading by users or correlated with links to your content, the reality is that if you produce the right kind of content, that social sharing is a huge aid to building your visibility and helping get those people reading and the links. So you really have to think about what you create. Very important. And paid social, by the way, works really well for this too. It doesn't just have to be organic social media. I know one brand that does a lot of social sharing. They pay 6 cents a click to drive targeted people to their content. 6 cents a click on Facebook. That's not bad. Of course, they're in sort of the master's degree level of expertise in how you do that. So key takeaways I want to give you for content marketing is stop producing good content. It's a waste of time. You have to be thinking about elite content. You're going to be much better off producing a small number of pieces that are really elite in nature than trying to publish every day, forget that, or even every week necessarily. It's more about the level to which your content goes. You've got to be thinking long form, maybe a data-driven study like we do, opinion-forming journalism, something that's thorough and comprehensive and really solves problems for a lot of people. And it's funny because we like to think that we're in the attention deficit age and we do everything, you know, and we do. But like when you have a real problem, you don't want to do it that way. You actually want to dig deeper, and that's still true today. And of course, you promote it everywhere and measure your results and adapt. Okay, next up, rich answers in search. And just in case you're not familiar with what this is, here are a couple of examples. Here's an example of, you know, how many calories in a pepperoni pizza. It's 285. I know you were all wondering. And if you aren't clear as to what 2 times 285 is, they give you a little calculator here, and you can actually dial it up to 2 slices, 3 slices, and so forth, and you can see what your dinner is doing to you. So, okay, next up, I'm going to try a little demo for you of another one. Wish me luck. Okay. Why are fire engines red?
According to Wonderopolis, one popular answer to why fire trucks are red goes something like this: because they have 8 wheels and 4 people on them, and 4 plus 8 makes 12, and there are 12 inches in a foot, and 1 foot is a ruler, and Queen Elizabeth was a ruler, and Queen Elizabeth was also a ship.
Sailed, sorry, it got cut off. Hang on, I got to read the rest of it. Sailed the seas, and in the seas are fish, and the fish have fins, and the fins fought the Russians, and the Russians are red, and fire trucks are always rushing around. So that's the full answer. So it's actually from a Monty Python skit. That's where it got from. And the reality is, I actually don't know whether they leave the answer up because they get such good engagement with it. Clearly, they didn't actually answer the question, right? And they do try to do that. But anyway, that's the best answer we've ever found in Google's rich answers. And by the way, just so you know, we published a study recently where we looked at 1.4 million search queries and found over 200,000 different rich answers. So we did really comprehensive study of all this. And that's still the best of them all. So actually, Siri, by the way, gives the same answer, in case you were wondering. So this is the first version of the study we did. We've done these tests twice. I mentioned one where we did 1.4 million queries. We originally did one with 850,000 queries, and the one and then we did it again to see how things progressed. So the first study was based on data from December of 2014, and then the second study was based on data in July of 2015. And we did this measurement to see how it was progressing. Is Google doing this more? Are they providing more of these answers? And here's what you see is, just looking at the bottom line here, almost 200,000 answers. 22.6% of the things we tested back in December gave an answer, and it's up to 31%. So that's an increase of nearly 40%. And the reason why this is important is this data shows us that they're doing more of it. And they're going to keep doing more of it. You're going to see more of this in the search results. And if you remember what I showed you before, this shows up above all the regular search results. So that's really cool. Some key points about rich answers. As I said, they're going to keep expanding. A lot of their rich answers come from public domain data. don't use public domain data as a way to get search traffic to your website. It's not smart. It's not going to work. Eventually, Google's just going to take it away. Okay, and easily licensed data. If you search on certain song lyrics, Google shows that now because they have license agreements with some of the recording companies. So they're taking that away. And then you want to try to develop content that gets rich answers. And one of the questions I get asked a lot about this is, well, this is only for Wikipedia and the really authoritative domains, right? Well, here's an example from a site called Steady Demand. The question is how to get more followers on Google+. Their Moz domain authority is only 38. And you compare that to Wikipedia, which is 100, it's a big gap. So you don't have to have the most authoritative website out there. And so I'm going to walk into this example a little bit more because I want to show you a bit more about it. Here's how it showed up in the search results. The query was how to get more followers on Google+. And then boom, above all the search results, you have the explanation of the result and then a link to their page, right? So that's nice. And then it doesn't even present the whole answer, and there's a little more items thing down here. And what that means is that you have to click through. If I searched on this to get the full answer, I have to click through. How much traffic do you think that's going to drive to these people? Probably a lot, right? I'm going to show you that data in a moment. And the other cool thing is that they rank 5 normally, right? So they're normally in the 5th position, and they jumped over everybody to have a result above all the search results. That's really cool too. So this is a neat thing to understand. And on the page where they address this question, they give a really simple, direct answer to the question, right? So there's the answer. It's like, it kind of has the question there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's what you do. And Google found this. This is key. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. And here's what it did for their traffic. That's pretty sweet, right? That's the traffic to that particular web page. It's up, I don't know, 3 times because they went from that number 5 position, which they actually still hold, to having this rich answer displayed by Google above everybody. It jumped right over 4 other people. So really neat. So of course that leads me to the next question. How can I get me some? Right? So we ran another test because that's what we do some of the time at Stone Temple Consulting. And since we're in the SEO business, we made a list of 5 common questions. So how to implement a no-follow. These are, for SEO tech geeks, these are common questions, right? How to implement a no-index tag, these kinds of things. And we thought we would try to create some content and attempt to get these kinds of rich answers for ourselves. And then we actually filmed 5 videos about them. We published them on May 20th, but when we published them, we included a complete transcript with an outline of clear steps that answers the question, okay? And then the content was a lot more, like one of them was how to implement a no-follow. We went a lot deeper than just how to implement a no-follow. We talked about why and what's the impact. So we gave a very thorough piece of content. And then, so that was all part of what we created. And then we shared this on Google+, and we submitted it in Google's Search Console just to help Google discover it quickly. 3 days later, we had a rich answer box. So this is really sweet. I didn't add any links to my site. I didn't do any, I didn't have to do any of these things. We just did this, created this content, and boom, we have something that we get this little rich answer result right at the top of the site. So now I said we published 5 videos. We got the rich answers on 2 of them and not on the other 3. Okay, but 40% to go from, well, we actually didn't even have this page before. So we went from having no page to above all the search results with a direct answer to a user question. That's pretty good, right? So here's kind of what it got down to is identify a simple question, provide a direct answer, offer value-added info, that's really important, and then make it really easy for users and Google to find in the, on the web page. And that's basically what we ended up doing. So some key takeaways here. Rich answers can and do drive more traffic, so they are desirable to get them. The algorithm Google uses for this is not authority-centric. You don't need to be a Wikipedia to get them. You don't need to get a lot of links to get them. And what they're doing is they're measuring the quality of the content on the page. So that's the key. And this actually is a new type of SEO. It's a new thing that you can do that we weren't talking about a year ago. And that's really neat too. So, okay. Second part here, and I'm sure I'm, okay, just keeping track of where I am. So what's coming in the future? 5 trends that I want to talk about. Rise of the Millennials is one of them. This is really important. Just briefly, I'm going to talk about authorship. Everybody remember Google authorship out there? Mobile and voice search and what's going on with that. And then just a little bit on deep learning. So, okay, here's a dictionary definition of millennial. Somebody reaching adulthood around the year 2000. And there's a few things that are true about millennials, okay? One is that they really expect high quality. And you're going to say, well, gosh, I'm a baby boomer, right? I expected high quality my whole life too. But my ability to get that high quality and get alternative choices was really low. Now it's a couple clicks away. So if your quality, if it's judged to be low, they're gone. I didn't have the ability to do that 30 years ago. The generation coming alive today does, right? They also look for engagement and entertainment. It's kind of a similar reason, because there's brands you're competing with that's giving it to them, right? They're requiring authenticity, right? Just ask Volkswagen. I mean, they took a major beating, right? They really got hurt in a big way, because there's so many different ways that inauthentic behavior can get exposed, right? I mean, I've listed just a few here. They're also impatient in terms of time. You got to give them what they want fast. If you don't give them what they want fast, they're also going to be out of here. This is a little chart that just shows that by the time you're, if you have a 4-second delay in loading your video, you've already lost 30% of your audience, right? I mean, why? Because it wasn't that important to me to watch your video. I'll go watch another one. And, I mean, I don't know how long this wait's going to go, and I'm giving up on you. And then my favorite observation is millennials have a shorter attention span than goldfish. So actually, it's not good science here, but it's kind of fun to say. Okay, who are the millennials? Oh, no, never mind. You don't have to do that. But because there's other enticing, options available. So after they get into your content, if you're not maintaining their attention, you lose them. So, I mean, how do you succeed? First thing to understand is only if they want you to. It's at their choice whether you're given the chance to be successful. Very important mental frame of mind. And to do that, you have to look at different ways to build the relationship. You got to be prepared to engage and entertain, deliver experiences for them, and you can't be in the middle of your market. You got to be the best, or be the cheapest, or I guess you could be the closest, right? If it's a local business, you don't really have any choice other than that. And very direct, open, and honest messaging. All right, next up, Google authorship. Oops, didn't go forward. Okay. Actually, Mark Traphagen over there, hold your hand up, Mark, and I were the ones who helped break the news to the world that Google had stopped support for authorship, which was this general notion of tracking who published what and giving certain perks to people who did that, such as showing their photo next to their search results and maybe even potentially impacting ranking. So they killed that in theory in August of 2014, if I'm remembering my timeline right. But recently, Google's Gary Illyes, back on October 1st, said that Google might start to support it again. And there's a tagging protocol people used called rel author that was required to participate in this program. And so this Gary Illyes said, well, you should start using those tags again, or at least if you have them, leave them up there, because we might start supporting them again. And this created this great deal of consternation and shock in our industry. But if you're thinking about this, whether Google supports this notion of authorship or not actually doesn't matter. What matters is you have to really focus on building your own authority anyway. You think about what I just talked about with millennials. It's really important to do a good job of building your own authority. So the first part of that is being an expert. You don't get to opt out of that one. You don't get to hire a copywriter and give them an hour to get smart. Not that copywriters can't do a great job. Just if they're getting smart on something where you're trying to publish on a major journal, you're gonna have to give them a lot of time. Don't try to do it on cheap. So I'm not specifically picking on copywriters here. I'm just making an observation about what you have to let them be able to do. And you have to create great content ultimately, and then interact with other experts online, help people, write for high authority sites. We talked about some of the columns that I write online earlier. And this is what Google's Matt Cutts said about building your reputation before he went on his leave of absence. But basically, if you're focusing on building your reputation online, you are doing the kinds of things that Google wants to value anyway. So it's really important. So just a brief summary for this. Will Google look at this again? Maybe. But building authority really shouldn't be about Google for you. It should be about how you participate in the overall ecosystem. It's about how you differentiate. It's about your reputation and visibility. And by the way, it does work really well with the millennials. Okay, so next up, just talk a little bit about voice search. So as of May of this year, Google made it official that there are more searches happening on mobile devices than on desktop devices in the US and Japan and 8 other countries. That's really significant. I already talked a little bit about this experience before. So, and then here's what Greg Sterling from Search Engine Land said, is that voice search is going to be the preeminent way of interfacing with a number of devices. And think of it, it's no longer typing, but speaking to your device is going to be critical. So, of course, here are some of the devices, wrist watches. Somebody want a graft in their skin? Tooth in their mouth? Anybody want that? No volunteer? No? Rachel, no? Okay, yeah. The radiating device inside of my head is a no thank you. So that's my vote as well. But looking at this, here's what the situation is with the nature of the devices that are going to be installed by the year 2020, which is the far right side here. The things we think of as devices today, smartphones, tablets, PCs, right? 1/3 of the installed devices in 2020 will be a smartphone, a tablet, or a PC. 2/3 will be something else. A wearable device, your refrigerator, your thermostat, your microwave, your door, your car. I actually drive a Tesla, by the way, so I already have an internet-connected car. Very exciting. But 2/3. And if I got a, I'm not typing on this thing. Okay, this is actually an old-fashioned watch. But if it were a wearable internet device, I wouldn't be typing on it, right? I'd have to talk to it. So you have to get used to the idea that you're going to have a lot more voice search happening. And so here's some key points about that. I already made the point up top here. But natural language interfaces are going to be a big deal. Okay? Right now, with the computer, we're used to typing in a phrase that we've crafted to get what we want out of Google. That will stop. The search engines are going to have to be able to deliver it the way I want to and interact with me the way I want to. PC screens aren't going to go away, however. I'm certainly, if I've just discovered I have diabetes, I'm not going to get my answer here, right? I'm going to want to go to something where I can see it in a bigger screen and consume more information, get kind of a bigger picture. And so the demand for long-form information is going to continue as well. Okay, content effectiveness optimization. Okay, that's what it sounds like. We're going to optimize our content to make it more effective. So first point is, think about what percentage of the people who come to a page on your website do you satisfy? So here I've created an example, maybe it's 70%. So if you're Google and I look at a web page and I realize that this web page over here satisfies 70%, and this one over here satisfies 60%, which one do I want to rank higher? I want to rank the 70%, right? Because that's going to satisfy my users better. And so that's, start thinking about that, because now here's the next concept. I'm just creating, imagine you have a site about car parts. Someone comes to your page after searching on oil filters, and they land on your oil filters page. Well, what do they want? Well, yeah, some of them want oil filters. I get that. That's not the only thing. Some of them will want a manual so they buy the right one. Shock of all shocks, some of them might want oil, right? They might want a how-to video. And by the way, I'm going to be tinkering with the car today, so maybe I ought to have a link to the page where you can buy other parts that I might be tinkering with at the same time. Windshield wipers, for example. And obviously on a site like this, you probably ought to have a way to buy. So there ought to be a shopping cart, and there ought to be a privacy policy. So you start thinking holistically about the whole picture of everything those users want when they arrive at a page. It isn't just the one thing that page is about, and you have to create experiences that answer that. Here's a little data to back that up. This is a test that actually Google and Bing many years back collaborated in a test where they introduced small delays in search results to see how it impacted their results. What they tested isn't so important here, other than the two things I've circled, which is they showed a very direct correlation between user satisfaction with the results and their revenue. And just go back to what I just said about you satisfy 70 or 60% and why they should prefer the page with 70%. Their revenue goes up if they give you good results. It's that simple. So that means you need to be a good result for the particular query. Very important concept. And the other thing to realize is the competition is not just Google. Okay? Users have other options. And the competition isn't just Bing. Yes, Bing's a competitor, but they can go to Facebook. They can text someone. They can text their friend. Those are options to get answers to your questions. Maybe Apple, you can use Siri. You can go search for a product on Amazon. So there's tons of different competitors that they have. So anyway, just some points about this. Think about task completion. Help users complete their task. Has to be a deliberate effort. What are the related needs? What are the ancillary needs? Ancillary need is like the windshield wiper. And they are measuring some form of this. We don't know exactly how, but we know they're measuring it. And then you got to design your web experiences to meet their needs. All right, I have one last thing to cover for you. And that is, I said I'd talk a little bit about deep learning. Humans and machines think differently. Right? The way they approach things are different. And machines are wonderful. They're very powerful in certain ways. But there's been a lot that's been happening in this area over the past few years. For example, Google's DeepMind, which is a company they acquired a while back, is teaching machines to read and comprehend what they're reading. And they're doing a whole ton of stuff to make the computers smarter and smarter. They're also making key networks and key advances in neural networks, where they're being able to get much more multi-layered in how they analyze things. And the details of that, I'm not the expert in that. But when you think about the kinds of things they're trying to solve, just one simple problem is trying to recognize a face, right? So here I'm showing a bunch of faces, all very different. Turns out, by the way, these are all smiling faces and they're all facing forward, right? Imagine this is the frame that Google is looking through, and then now have to recognize all of these as a face, right? They're all different viewpoints. It's a really hard problem just to solve that one thing. So yeah, there's so much money going this, it's unbelievable. Some of you may have heard of a thing called RankBrain. It is a new initiative that Google announced. They actually announced just a few weeks ago that they have an algorithm. They call it RankBrain. It is a machine learning algorithm, and it's the third most important ranking factor in SEO, where the first are still the quality and relevance of your content and links. And what RankBrain does is help answer questions like this. So what's the title of the consumer at the highest level of the food chain? Okay, hold up your hand if you even understand the question. So that was somebody voting. Yeah. Okay. It turns out, by the way, this is Google's results, which are very good. The answer to the question is the word predator. The consumer at the highest level of the food chain is one that's consuming everything else. So that's the so their rank brain algorithm has helped them understand language a lot better. So, but here are the traditional ranking systems: whether they can find your content, whether they think it's important, whether they think it's relevant. Very simple view of it. But what's missing from that is exactly what I just said: is understanding whether it's relevant and important or whether they can find it doesn't matter if they don't even understand the question in the first place, right? So, by the way, I put up natural language processing here. That's not actually the technology they're using, but it's similar. They're just going through a process to understand the content. So, my final summary here: they're making massive investments in this area. The key is really natural language search and comprehension. Better understanding customer intent is a really big deal. And then you've got to really embrace this idea of content effectiveness I talked about a little while ago. It's going to take a long time for this to unfold. Even though they've called it their third most important ranking factor, it didn't change everything on you overnight. The things you were doing and thinking about before probably still matter. So anyway, that's what I have for you tonight. Thank you.